Hello Doomers and Doomettes, and before we begin this video, I just wanted to extend my highest gratitude to you all. Surpassing 300 subscribers is something I'm astounded by, and I truly appreciate it from all of you. It's really exciting to see this channel get support from viewers like you, and with some free time this summer, I'm going to be working hard to get a lot more content out. Thank you all so much for your support. I'm your host Didi, and today we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite toy lines to collect.
Transformers! Transformers!
Now, there are lots of videos that go over the lore and characters, and there's some really in-depth channels you can check out. I'll have a few of my favorites suggested in the video, but this content is only half the battle. Maybe you're looking for something new to collect, or maybe you're interested in getting into the brand, or maybe you feel a bit burnt out from some other lines. Well, worry not. Today we're going to get an introduction to Transformers as a collecting hobby, and why now may be the best time to really get into these lines. Just before we start, I ask that if you're enjoying this video to be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. As this channel is growing thanks to all of your support, I try to keep track of what people enjoy seeing most on the channel. With that out of the way, let's dive right in.
We now return to the Transformers.
As most of you are probably aware, Transformers is a toy line created in a joint effort by Hasbro and the Japanese toy company Takara Tomy, and it was created in the 1980s. The toys grew into a multimedia juggernaut full of cartoons, comics, video games, and blockbuster movies of ranging quality. This of course has led to such a wide variety of toys for each of the series, spanning over 35 years at this point. So for this discussion today, I'd just like to start off by saying two things. First off, as this is framed as an introduction to collecting the series, we're mainly going to be focusing on items currently available for the most part, or recently released items, and won't go too much into older figures aside from establishing their history. If you're already out there searching for figures from 20 years ago or original figures from the 80s, I'll assume that you already know what you're doing. Second, this video is going to focus mostly on the figures collectors seek out, and not go so much into detail on the kid-oriented lines like Rescue Bots or Cyberverse, since the difference in demographics is very clear. Now, if you're absolutely new to the brand, I'd say the most important thing to know is that there are three primary figure types to collect. Those being Generations figures, Masterpiece figures, and third-party or unlicensed figures, and each of them have their pros and cons we'll get into. So to start, let's talk about the biggest one, Generations, otherwise known as CHUG, War for Cybertron, the Prime Trilogy, and many more names. So what is CHUG? It's a very common acronym for Transformers collectors, and you might see it mentioned quite a bit. It stands for Classics, Henkai, Universe, and Generations, each of which were sublines for the brand throughout the years. The line is considered to have started in 2006 under the Classics title, featuring revamped versions of the original characters such as Optimus Prime, Megatron, Starscream, and so on. These figures ranged from about $10 to $20 and were roughly 5 to 9 inches tall depending on the figure, and Henkai was the Japanese version of this line produced by Takara Tomy, which mostly were just repaints of the classic figures with better paint schemes. These were released at mass retail and in 2008 changed names to Universe, while still keeping the general idea of revamping old character designs into new styles before being renamed to Transformers Generations in 2010. The Generations line has persisted to this day with numerous sublines underneath it themed around certain gimmicks. An example of this would be the Prime Wars trilogy from 2015 to 2018, which largely consisted of figures that had the ability to combine with each other in one way or another. Now, I apologize in advance, as here's the part where I'm sure these words will start to become a little bit of a mouthful, but just sit tight and I promise you'll understand in the end. Today, in 2021, the Generations series still has two primary lines under its umbrella: the War for Cybertron trilogy, which began in 2019, and the Studio Series line. The War for Cybertron trilogy is a total relaunch of the Transformers toy line, reintroducing the classic characters with new detailing and far more modern posing and articulation. Each year brings upon a different theme. 2019 had Siege, which featured more sci-fi vehicle modes based on space. 2020 had Earthrise, featuring more Earth-accurate alternate modes, and 2021 had Kingdom, which brings in the animals.
Welcome to the Beast Wars!
So, at first glance, these characters can have really long proper names if you want to get technical. This figure shown here would technically be the Transformers Generations War for Cybertron Siege Voyager-class Megatron. Quite a mouthful, right? Well, let's take what I said to break that down. Transformers, of course, is the toy line. Generations refers to the line that's sold at retail. War for Cybertron is the current subline that's a trilogy. Siege is this year's theme, so you can tell how old it is. And Voyager-class tells you its size and price point.
Everybody got that?
Now, typically, most normal people will call this Siege Megatron, but knowing the full details of the line I'm sure can certainly help you when it comes to building your collection and finding exactly what you want. The really good thing about this line is that the major characters typically get re-released quite a bit, so it's quite easy to get the main characters if you miss out. This Megatron figure actually, for example, has made appearances in 3 parts of the War for Cybertron trilogy. He was released normally in Siege, in Earthrise he had some new toolings, and in this year in Kingdom, he's getting a new color scheme as a Walmart exclusive. So even if you're brand new to the line today, you can still get a main character like Megatron. It's not without its flaws, and sometimes some characters can spike in aftermarket prices, but generally most of the main A-list cast members are released every year or so in different toy forms. Studio Series is the other toy line in the Generations umbrella, which started in 2018 and focuses on characters from the various live-action movies, going as far back as the 2007 film. In 2021, Studio Series actually expanded to include figures from the first Transformers movie in 1986 under a banner of Studio Series 86. These are still part of the main line, but focus on the original characters. This was done so that more original characters from the 80s were completed, while not taking up spots in the War for Cybertron line, which began to focus on characters outside the original generation of Transformers and into other series, such as Beast Wars. But since these toys are still in the same overarching line of generations, they fit together quite well on a shelf. Presumably, once the next Transformer movie comes out, figures will be made available in the Studio Series line again as well. So that's a brief explanation of Generations, and that was likely the most long-winded to explain of the 3. I promise the other 2 won't be nearly as densely packed with information. Next up is the Masterpiece line, and this one you'll probably not find at retail. This one is more for the serious collector and primarily produced by Takara Tomy in Japan. It started in 2003 at a very slow rate of only a figure or so a year, before effectively being rebooted in 2010. The focus is on high-end premium figures with larger sizes and premium paint and die cast. Typically, these have far more complex transformations, are much more delicate, and released much further apart. You can expect these to range for at least $100, and that goes for the small ones, with some of the bigger ones even going for over $300 in value. Typically, about 4 to 5 of these will come out over the course of a year. Traditionally, these have primarily focused on the Generation 1 cast from the 1980s, however, more recently they have slowly expanded into other lines again, such as Beast Wars and the movies. There's far less re-releases in this line, although every few years or so, main characters like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee will get redone figures with new sculpts, and sometimes a few characters will get updated decos. So in comparing Generations to Masterpiece, that's not to say one is superior, but both offer different elements. The Generations line is cheaper and more available, featuring more characters, but at the end of the day there's still toys. Masterpiece figures, on the other hand, are slower to release and are far more expensive. However, the detailing and premium standing of each figure can make the collection look very professional and seem more as a centerpiece to a collection. So what happens when you have character-shaped holes in Generations or Masterpiece collections? Maybe your favorite character is a bit obscure, or you're not happy with those offerings. Then what? Well, there is a third option: third party. Now, third-party figures are not officially licensed or supported by Hasbro or Takara Tomy, and honestly, there are probably some cases of copyright infringement. But don't worry, no one's gonna break down your doors for getting any of these, and most are available on prominent collecting sites like Big Bad Toy Store. Third-party figures differ from knockoffs because, unlike knockoffs, which steal figure molds and designs to reproduce, most third-party figures are entirely newly designed figures. As one of my personal favorite Transformer reviewers, Bobby Skullface, says, the difference is akin to someone tracing a piece of artwork of Batman and someone drawing their own original fan art of Batman. Now, there are dozens and dozens of third-party companies, each offering their own stylings of figures, and considering the nature to obtain them, they're only really bought by collectors. Primarily, third-party works to fill in gaps in Generations or Masterpiece, working on characters who don't already have figures in those lines, or doing new stylings of familiar characters. There's also a third faction of third-party companies that focus on what's called Legends scale, creating smaller size figures for far larger displays. The benefits of third-party figures are that they're more likely to do obscure characters or ones that Hasbro and Takara Tomy are avoiding. Since they're not bound to the same toy regulations as giant corporate entities like Hasbro, they can also get a bit more creative with transformations and figure designs. The problem with third party, however, is that although they fill in a lot of gaps in both the Generations and Masterpiece scales, they can be really expensive as well. Most figures, again, like Masterpiece, are at least $100, and that's for very basic ones. Since there's such a long list of companies that produce figures as well, sometimes the quality can be a bit of a mystery. Some companies have much stronger reputations than others, so I'd really recommend looking up a figure for reviews before you buy, especially for newer companies. Finally, as these are produced by far smaller companies of only handfuls of people, they don't reach the high production numbers that official items do. And in most cases, since they mainly exist to fill gaps, they're usually replaced and sold off quite quickly if an official figure is confirmed to be coming out. So those are the three main figure lines. Generations, the one sold at Walmart and Target and generally the most available but also the most toy-like. Masterpiece, the high-end premium line that releases more slowly. And third party, the unlicensed figure that mainly exists to fill gaps. I hope that if you're new to the brand, this gives you a little bit of insight on where to start. I just wanted to give an overview to anyone who may be just starting out or a little bit interested, as with the War for Cybertron reboot, it's a great time to start a new collection. What are your thoughts on Transformers? Have you just started collecting, or have you been collecting for a while? Is there anything you want to know about Transformers to get into the line? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, I would immensely appreciate if you would consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed this content. Videos will be coming out on a weekly basis, and I'll try to even get 2 videos out a week, so be sure to hit that bell to be notified as soon as the next upload is available. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I can see you next time.